so honored the way you introduced me. Thank you so much.
Well, you deserve that honor. I mean, as I said, I've known you a few years, and I've seen how you've moved, and I've seen how you've grown. And yeah, I have to give you those roses right now. I had to give them to you.
Man, I appreciate that, because it has really been like a long process. Like I was sharing last night with some ladies who I actually think will probably be the next ladies panel discussion team. And I was just sharing that, when I started Between Us Girls, the podcast 3 years ago, I didn't really know why I was starting. It was just kind of like something said podcast. And so, we just got started, and it was not easy to learn how to do all that and to market ourselves and to try to win awards and, get in the newspaper and get press and stuff like that. But like in just trying and just sharing our message continually, we were just really able to do that. So, I mean, it's been a long journey, but I'm blessed and I'm grateful that I've had this experience, because I've taught myself so much.
Yeah, and I have witnessed that growth, and I can see how you have grown into the lessons you've learned. And I've actually, if I can actually say this, I've actually seen a growth into even more of the woman you've become.
Yeah.
And I could say from here, it is beautiful to watch.
I really appreciate that, because, whenever you're experiencing growth and you're changing, it is hard to stand in that, because people are going to start noticing that you're different, and then it's kind of like you have to fight the battle of, will people accept the new me, or will people try to chop me up and try to take me back to the old me? And so I've had to like really build like a toolbox, and this has been like the whole 35 years, but just building a toolbox that kind of protects me from what people are going to be saying about me. And then the need to like really need that validation, because I don't, and it wasn't always so.
Yeah. And I think that is the case for just about all of us. Mm-hmm. But the fact that you had the strength to recognize, okay, I think I need to do some work within me, that is important. Well, what I like to do is, even though you're considered family to me, you're sort of like a first-time guest on this platform. So what I like to do is open the way. And I'm going to open the way a little interesting.
Okay.
I'm going to do something that you do. Now, let me get your zodiac sign so I can properly stereotype you.
You're going to pull a me on me? I am a Taurus.
And the reason why I did that, and you know that, is because I am a fellow Taurian.
Absolutely. The boss out here.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So I always love to represent for us Taurians. So it's cool to have a fellow Taurian on here.
Right. The reason why I think we started doing that is just because I like, astrology. And I think like there's so many notes of just understanding people and, hearing about their zodiac. And I just learned recently actually that my dad used to read charts. So in like my spiritual journey that I've been on, just in finding out that, these gifts are really in my DNA. So it's not, I'm a weirdo or anything like that. It's just like, it is what it is. And so I love asking people what their sign is, because it just gives me some kind of intuitive insight into them. So we can start talking. I know who I'm talking to. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. And I have to say that is probably one of the best icebreaker questions you can ask anybody.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has an answer.
Right. Everyone has an answer. And I've heard just about every one of your episodes, and it seems to every time you've interviewed somebody, it has opened them up.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And that is what I found since starting course correction, is that because I'm not talking to my friends, it can be very difficult to get people to open up. And my goal is to find out who you are. I want to know how you became the person that I'm talking to. Because the thing is that we see that person, but we never know their growth. And then we're competing with somebody who is a growth warrior. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people went through a lot. So in the teaching of what people had to grow through or what they used to get through it, then you kind of can humanize them and understand that I can do it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is why I knew you would be perfect for this, because that's what this platform is all about.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can get to know a little bit more about you. Now, you have mentioned that you are a Houstonian. Mm-hmm. Technically. Yeah. But you didn't grow up in Houston per se. Which Houston suburb did you grow up in?
I came from Tomball. Mm-hmm. And it was what grew me.
Yeah. And what was the experience like growing up in Tomball?
Well, I was really one of the only people who looked like me, So I spent a lot of time by myself. And not to say I didn't have friends, because I did. I was very popular, and people always wanted to be around me and talk to me. And, I guess I was healing them or whatever, in the consultations that we would have, the meetings. And, even as a small people, you are counseling your friends. We're going through, things together and learning. But I was by myself. Every person that I grew up with, and actually I'm having dinner with those girls tonight, but they were all white. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't have, a lot of people when they meet me, they think I have this sedity, stuck up mentality because of the way I look. But I didn't grow up being the princess of Black girls. You know what I mean? I grew up as a Black girl in a sea of white faces. So that didn't afford me any privilege.
Right.
So I had to do a lot of work to keep myself grounded, because I had a lot of emotional trauma growing up, just in being human and having a family, right? Like, who doesn't experience some things? But I wouldn't be who I am today if I had gone to a school where people saw me as a princess or somebody who was, beautiful and just really, like, they voted me the class clown out of all the things, which I am funny. But I was like, when I saw that, I was like, well, why didn't they say I was most beautiful or something like that? You know what I mean? Just because I looked at the people that they did choose, and while they are beautiful, I felt like, man, I know I'm glowing inside. Why they didn't pick me? So I had to kind of come to terms with some of those feelings of rejection that I had, because there were many, especially trying to date, like white young men will want you, but they won't.
Yeah.
So it's like you kind of are alone. And so that is really what I experienced growing up, was kind of just by myself trying to make it through, because I didn't really have anybody I could relate to.
You're connecting a lot of the dots that I thought that I had about you. That right there makes a lot of sense in terms of how I view you.
Really? How do you?
Well, I never really thought you were sedity or stuck up or uppity. I never thought that. I thought aloof. I thought distant. Not necessarily standoffish, but you would hold people at a distance. That was the vibe I got.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
But along with that, funny, humorous, intelligent, purposeful.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first knew of you, I thought all of those things. And what I have seen over the past few years, I've seen some, if not actually a lot, of the aloofness start to disappear. It's almost like seeing you peel off layers of yourself
Right.
And I always say this to, especially to women. It is more beautiful when you see her be vulnerable, because you get to see the true strength of who she is when she peels off the layers of who she is.
Right.
But I get why she has the layers on, because this world is absolutely screwy and you have to put up your guard. I totally get it.
Like, there was a lot of abuse throughout my whole timeline, but those intentional experiences that were set before I even got here were meant to make me the person that is on your show. You know what I mean? Because without any of that, I wouldn't be able to express myself so fully and communicate the way that I do, because that takes work. You know, like I've been growing since I was a little kid, having trauma and experiences and having to come up with creative ways to heal. And so that kind of has allowed me to put all of that together so that I can give it to you guys, because that's really what my goal is, to share the message. And sometimes they don't even be me. It's like I'll just channel and I'm just sharing what is happening in this universe. And I think it's important for people to start waking up to that awareness. And I'm also trying to help people do that.
Yeah. And I see that, and I love it. I love that you're tapping into that part of you. Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned a key figure that I have been now hearing you mention more and more as time has gone on. And you mentioned him a little earlier, your father.
Yes.
Now, how important is, because I will not, because, well, you can explain this. Mm-hmm. How important is your father to your life?
Well, you know, I was thinking about that actually. My dad was always kind of, I wouldn't even say he was always my hero, but he was always my teacher. And I wasn't sitting right next to him learning, but like from the time that I could remember, he would have me editing his emails and figuring out how to communicate what he was trying to say, because he wasn't good at that. So he knew I was. So he would pull me from where I was in the house and say, hey, can you come and send this email for me? Can you check it for me and make sure that it's right? This is at like 9 years old. So
wow,
that's how I now at 35 know how to send an email that gets the point across, makes the ask, makes people feel comfortable, and just kind of delivers the communication effectively. So my dad is still very important to me because, like, you know, in my spiritual journey, I do practice ancestor work, and he's my number one ancestor at this point, because that's the one that I know for sure. So if I'm channeling or if I'm trying to draw that in, of course, I absolutely use him. I have his records and I have his notebooks that he did his work on. I have some things that have his handwriting. You know, I'm still really, really connected to him, but really most of that is because I'm still in that grief process, you know, because I was 16 when he passed away, and I just didn't really have a chance to learn all the things that I think he would have taught me. And saying that, like, referring back to doing the astrological readings, like, that's a gift. And he stopped doing it because he didn't want to be giving people bad news, because he was feeling so deeply, you know, as an empath, what they were going to be experiencing. And if I had been able to learn how to channel that energy, not by myself, which is what I've had to do, I would probably have walked my path a lot sooner. But again, the experience is designed the way it's supposed to, because I may not have been ready to share this message before I was ready to share the message, because I had to grow to this person that was able to say, this is me. If you don't like it, oh, well, click off. You know, because if you're not able to say that, you're not going to talk about the truth. I hope that wasn't too rambling.
No. It was fine, because I'm just blown away by the growth I'm hearing, and it's beautiful.
Well,
beautiful.
I appreciate that. I mean, I didn't realize that people were noticing so much what I was doing, because when I started course correction, I didn't even really know what I was doing. I just knew that I needed to do something different, because the end of that original show was like a death to me. because we had gone so far together.
We are talking to the CEO of Creative AF, Michel Roy. She's joining me on Revelations, and she just opened the way for us, wonderfully I may add. And we're going to segue to this segment called Bridge to Prosperity. Now I'm going to start a little more lighthearted and probably build in intensity, but one of the things I have noticed about you with when you would be on Between Us Girls is you would break into song almost at a drop of a dime. So when did you start just having that itch to pull out the musical side of you?
Well, I'm going to go back to my dad. Like when I was a little girl, records were played in my house every day. You know, music was always played in my house. And I always felt drawn to music and listening to the lyrics. Like there are so many people who don't listen to the lyrics. They're only listening to the beat or, you know, the hook. And I'm like, you didn't hear what they just said? Because it's like there's so many notes in the songs. Like every time a person is writing a song and it goes viral or it's a really successful or it's touched millions, like listen to those words. There's an intention there. Like that's just a note for you, you know, like it's for the world. And that music just resonates so much with me because it makes me feel better. Like when I talk about changing my mindset and changing my vibration, I'm simply talking about turning on a song that reminds me of joy, and it just makes me feel good. So when I break into song, I'm feeling good. So if I start singing at random, I just feel so good. My mom's like that, actually. Like growing up, whenever we would just be together at home, she would just kind of start singing. And it's just like that has always kind of been in me. My dad was playing music all the time, and my mama was always singing music. So that's just, it's a part of me. Like I can't make it go away. And Danielle used to always be like, oh God, because like, you know, I mean, and once I do turn it on, sometimes it is hard to stop, but I don't care. I feel like somebody needs to hear that it could just be, that's the one thing that makes them smile that day. You know what I'm saying? Or that's the one thing that makes them feel like, you know what, I can keep going, you know, or I can be funny, or I can be myself, or, you know, to let people know that it's okay to just be who you are.
Yeah. And I can tell you, being a faithful listener of your show, that was exactly the vibe I grabbed. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, this is nice. It's cool. It's this person who is just just at the mic, just at the ready singing something.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, right. Yeah. And sing songs that make me say, I haven't heard that song in years, man.
And to draw on some kind of memory. And just, I really just like making people think. The questions that I ask, the content that I create, I want people to be thinking, because when you start thinking and you start using your brain and you have to look for answers, that is when you grow.
So your musical influences, and for those who have not heard her sing, she actually does have a nice voice.
All right.
No, seriously, you do. Who would you say are your musical influences?
Oh my gosh. Tina Marie, Stevie Wonder, for sure. Listening to, I just broke out the Intervisions. When I opened that record hadn't been played in like 33 years. And it just felt so good to play that. And just to hear those lyrics and, okay, so the OJs, the Temptations, the Supremes, like you name Smokey Robinson. I'm basically like, Motown sound. I love old school music. Like I could go from I could start my musical enjoyment at like 1930 and end at like 1988. You know what I mean? Mm. Like there's something I can pick from every genre that makes me vibrate. And that's what I'm looking for. Okay.
Is it just simply on the soul end, or you listen to any hip hop or
Oh,
rock or pop or any of that too?
I listen to all kinds of music. The Eagles are actually one of my go-tos.
It's one of my go-tos as
I
well.
love the Eagles. Also like Three Dog Night, like anything. I used to listen to, I don't know if you were here whenever Oldies 104.5 or 94.5, either of those two stations. That's what I listened to when I was a kid. So I wasn't really listening to like rap or like pop. I was listening to the Tommy James and the Shondells, like that's what I was listening to. The Billboard from 1969 was one of my favorite CDs. And, like I could really, Billie Holiday, like Judy Garland, old school musicals. I'll sit and watch Singing in the Rain. You know what I mean? Like any music can hit you. Bob Marley. I was about to go into the song. One good thing about music is when it hits, you feel no pain. Like seriously, like any music that you can find can really set the difference in your day and just make you feel good.
Well, if you have not ever heard this, hopefully you have, but if you've not ever heard this, don't stop doing that. Please continue to do that. It is part of your charm.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's kind of why I want to bring back a good panel show. And actually, I'm working on, we said we're going to get into show stuff. So I'm going to let you lead.
Oh, look at that. Look at her. Look at God. No, I'm just joking. Sort of a hard shift. You are a single mother.
Yeah.
Of a son and a daughter. So what are the positives and negatives of single motherhood?
Okay. Positive. I don't have nobody tell me what to do. Okay. Negative. I don't know. Have nobody helping me with what I need to do. You know what I mean? So, it's a lot of work. And I do experience a lot of mom guilt because I'm the only parent, but I also need to feed my self-love. So that is really like kind of where I have been lacking. So I'd say the negative is definitely in not putting myself first, because the expectation is that I will put the kids first. And I don't know who sets the expectation, because I don't think that that's actually true. I think that's just as mothers, that's what we do. And that goes for moms who have a husband. But for me specifically, it's very difficult for me to remember that I need my love as well. Because if I can't love myself, then I can't love them fully. And that is really what has been the kind of the deciding factor for me to even start the course correction, because I was tired of bringing that negative energy home to my kids. Because I would be at work and I would be like, oh my God, I'm so tired, but I still have to go home and cook, and I still have to go home and help people with their homework, and I still have to run somebody over here and do this. And I would come in and I would be like a miserable little tornado. And I just said, I want to stop doing that. And so I did. Of course, it hasn't been super easy, because a mindset change is not easy, because you have to show up every day as what you said you were going to do. And that's not the easy thing. The easy thing is to complain and just continue to be in that miserable state. But I mean, I would like some help, but I don't know for sure that I would want a husband in the traditional sense. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like maybe I moved past that idea. I think at one time, and actually that's probably why I dated so many people, because I think subconsciously I was trying to find a daddy for my kids. You know what I mean? But in hindsight, not going about it the right way, and so now I'm kind of in a place where I'm just really like, I have a relationship, and that's good, and I'm enjoying it, and we're good, and everybody likes each other, but it's moving at the pace that's natural for it. It's not a race. Nobody's sprinting. Nobody's trying to make anybody become a different person. And so that's new for me. So in this time, I'm really am focusing on getting myself together and getting my house together more than I'm focusing on trying to find a daddy. You know what I mean? Because at this point, my son's 14 years old, he's about to be 15. He's past the point where somebody new can really kind of come in and take that. So it's going to take a different type of relationship to get him the tools that he needs,
Yeah.
I just rambled again, but
Yeah.
that's what I be doing.
No. That's all right. That's all right. What the key that I'm glad you said is you taking care of yourself. And I really believe that is one of the tenets for any woman, no matter the stage, whether she's single, without children, married with children, or unmarried with children. It seems as though women, and I probably would say taught and probably experienced by seeing their own mother. It seems like they take on, it seems like you see that your mother or your aunts or your older sisters, they take on so much of the burden of life. You think, okay, well, this is how I should be when I become a woman. And then you repeat the same thing.
Yes. And just like I said, my mom is here at my aunt's birthday party. I'm out in the car doing the interview, but she never did self-care. She never put herself first. She's still not. And so I'm trying now in my healing and learning to do that. I'm trying to help my mom also, because I see that for her. That's what she needs. And I always wanted that for her. I remember when I was a kid wondering why she wouldn't buy herself any clothes. You know what I mean? Wondering why she would always buy us something, but then she would have holes in her drawers. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we here? Why aren't you caring for yourself as well? But it's just that mom thing. You just like, my kids first. And I think part of that is being stuck in this societal, tunnel, the matrix, where we're like, well, what are people going to say if the kids don't have, if the kids don't look perfect? You know what I'm saying? So then we continue to kind of put ourselves on the back burner to provide all these things for our kids, extracurricular activities and, extra learning and extra clothes and fun and trips and vacations, but we don't do it for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes at a dangerous price to you.
Yes, because really that will kill you.
Exactly. And you all are too precious to be killed off too early.
Right.
I mean,
especially at our own volition, just because we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, you all are jewels, and and if you can take care of yourselves in any way, shape, or form possible, that's wonderful. But I totally understand how life can make a woman veer into different directions and say, okay, well, just to fit the motto of how a woman is supposed to be in society, I got to do this.
Yes.
I can totally understand that.
Like, the expectations that society sets on everybody are unrealistic, but they're absolutely unrealistic for single moms, because when you're one person and they're expecting you to do a job that really requires two people, and then the expectations that you're going to do an amazing job at it with zero mistakes. That's impossible. Like, I have fucked up a lot as a parent. And I've told my son recently, like, I hope you can forgive me, because I had to do a sin in AA because I didn't have the right coping mechanisms. I didn't have the tools to get through what was tough, and that's what I've taught myself now is how to cope. Because like I was telling you earlier, when we look at people who we admire, we only see them in the state that we admire. We don't see them while they're trying to get there, or what they're going through, or who they were before they got there. And I think it's so important to just be able to humanize everybody and say, that's a human. That person had a growth experience that brought them to that level. And I congratulate you on where you're at, instead of being jealous and competing and feeling resentful because you're not there. Well, get there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a podcast where a fellow single mother, and she has adult children. Mm-hmm. She actually looked at her adult children after, I think, some reflection. And she actually said to them, she said, look, unlearn a lot of the things that I taught you because I was messed up.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, that takes a lot of strength.
Yes.
A lot of strength to come to that point to say that to your offspring. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah.
important. It's important for them in their healing, because yes, you do be fucking up your kids and you do it by accident, That was what I was thinking. I was like, my mom and daddy didn't on purpose give me the wrong tools or not give me tools. They didn't have it, so it's like you got to humanize your parents. And your parents got to be able to look at their kids and realize this is another person that's having an experience. This person doesn't belong to me. This just because it's my baby doesn't mean that I own it. You know what I mean? Like we're all here for our own individual experience. And if we could start understanding that, we would have so much better relationships.
I could not have said that better myself if I tried.
You might have.
The host and producer of Between Us Girls presents Course Correction, Michelle Roy joining me on Revelations. And we're going to segue into the next segment, which is called Behind the Purpose. And as you have heard, this woman here, Michelle, has a lot of purpose to her. And so I want to see and hear from her mouth what makes her tick in certain aspects, in certain ways, and certain creations.
Okay.
You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but you get a chance to talk about it in full. Why did you and your team decide to create this program that I first learned to love and appreciate you, called Between Us Girls?
So we had a group chat, the original 5, and I always felt so good after we talked, and I felt like we were so funny and we had such good insight to each other. I thought, well, we could be giving this to the world, and I feel like that's what we need to do. So we had a friend who he had told me that he had recorded some things. So I was like, will you help me record this podcast? So we were with him for a while, and he helped us get started. And I still remember, and I've been talking about this a lot lately, the very first episode, the way I started was I said, okay, so this is the show. And like in thinking back on that, I'm like, oh, how unseasoned, but it was raw, like that
Right.
was it. And then just looking at that and seeing the growth, it's like, wow. Like I said, I still don't even know what it was that told me podcast, because if I hadn't started that, then I wouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you'll be amazed once you press record and slide a mic to your mouth for the first time, the journey that it takes from the unseasoned era to where you are now 3+ years later. And I've had the similar journey where I think back now to when I first did it myself, and I said, well, I could not picture myself saying the things I'm saying now that when I started, because I didn't think I had the bravery to actually say it, or even the seasoning to say it.
Right. And you didn't. But in the walking, and every time you press record, you're just training yourself and getting yourself ready for the next step,
So the show ended up getting 100 episodes strong.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of you mentioned some of them, but even more, what were some of the positives about that experience?
Wow, absolutely. Okay. So I just learned that I'm just not good at paperwork. That's something that I need to work on. But I think the most positive thing that came out of Between Us Girls was that the power is there, and that every person has influence. and we all have a reach. So whatever it is that, somebody who's listening to this right now, if you're thinking of starting a podcast, or you want to do a blog, or you want to do something on IGTV or YouTube, and you're like, well, nobody's going to listen to me. That's not true. There are people who will listen to you. You just got to keep sharing the message.
And I think that was one of the things that I really liked about you. Well, all ladies that participated in the show, that, you could think that it was just simply just, I guess, a chat between women. Mm-hmm. And it's just that, basically like a happy hour chat between women.
Yeah. I mean,
you could reduce it to that.
Right.
Only. But there was a message behind it. And I think I appreciated that more. And it's like, okay, so I don't feel as though I need to excuse myself from the room.
Right.
I'm actually going to be learning something.
Right.
Which that makes the experience even better, at least for a listener like myself.
Exactly. And the thing is that, when we started, we were trying to I always wanted to talk about stuff that I felt like was important, because I would see people arguing about it on social media, and I'm like, well, let's chat about that. Let's help these people get through some of this. But as we kept going, the things I wanted to talk about evolved. I wanted to talk about the things that were happening in our community. I wanted to talk about how women don't do self-care. I wanted to talk about how men and women don't have relationships. I wanted to talk about how people are with their kids. I wanted to talk about silence and secrets in our community, among things like molestation and stuff like that, because I feel like that's what we need to be talking about. And so now, as I'm on my spiritual journey, I feel like I want to continue to share those same messages, but I want to put the spin on it that's going to allow people to accept it and understand it in a way that is going to be palatable for them.
I'll get to some of my opinion about that in a minute.
Okay.
I'll hold judgment on that in a minute.
Okay.
But not bad, but but you all actually did something that most shows would like to do, and it's called a live show. So yeah. How was that experience for you guys?
It was kind of nerve-wracking at first, just because people could see us, because we had become seasoned at that point in talking and recording amongst each other. But when we had to do that, it was like we had to step out of our comfort zone and do something different. So that was like the first, that would actually was something that I have wanted to do since I was a little girl, because I always wanted to put on a show. And so that was my first opportunity to do that. And so now, like the week before, whenever we had Healthy Vibes, the community event that I hosted with my friend, we had a live mental health talk, and I had, performers and a DJ. So I was able to include all of these things that really have moved me my whole life, and just kind of put them together. And if we had never done that first live show, I wouldn't be able to do that. Like, I'm planning something so amazing for June, and people are just not going to understand it. But it was grown from that first live show. And so I think people are afraid to do live show. People are afraid to do a lot of things because they're afraid of how they're going to be perceived. But you can't be worried about that, because people are going to think what they're going to think. You're the one that decides who you are. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yes. Yes. I could not agree with you more, and I could not echo those same sentiments even harder. I totally agree that the influence of what you do is not external. It is totally internal. It's totally you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I totally understand.
And now I'm trying to be the best version of myself, so that I don't ever feel like I can't say the truth. Because there's been a lot of times that I will cut out things because I'm like, people are not ready to hear that. But somebody is, you know what I mean? And so in editing it out, I'm stealing from that person, whoever it is that needs to hear that.
Entrepreneur and podcast host and producer Michelle Roy is this week's guest on Revelations. Wow. Like I said, teaming with purpose is she. She definitely gave us purpose. She definitely bridged the prosperity to a wonderful place. She opened the way wonderfully. And now we're going to segue into the fourth segment, which I call Bring to Light. First question in Bring to Light will be thus. So how and why did Between Us Girls turn into course correction?
Well, how, I guess, is just because I think we just kind of got to a point where everybody was wanting to do something different, you know, and we had gone a long way. And so it was kind of like, we're going to barbecue our mildew. And I think, you know, some things didn't really line up for us all. And so everybody's kind of working on their own individual projects. And I do always hope to bring us back together, because I would love that, you know, if we could be together again, because in truth, starting course correction was me trying to pick up the pieces after feeling like, damn, I don't have a show anymore. And still wanting to have a show and still wanting to talk about the things I want to talk about and interview people and talk to people and learn things. And I spoke with my friend Fernando. He's a psychic, and he was like, you can still have a show. You just got to figure out how, you know? And so he kind of came up with the name Course Correction, because I was telling him that I felt like I was, you know, kind of having an awakening. I was, and I was trying to figure out who I was in that moment, because I had become so defined, I think, by Between Us Girls. And so when there was no Between Us Girls, I was kind of at well, who am I? So I had to take a step back, and I started trying to talk to people who had accomplished some of the things that I wanted to accomplish, you know, entrepreneurship, financial wellness, things like that, so that I could fix my life. Because I was in a place where I was like, damn, I don't have a show and I don't have no money. Damn. You know, so I started Course Correction, but I had, before that, I started Creative as, can I say that for?
Yeah, okay. Please go.
I started Creative as Fuck. My mom told me to say and Favored. Anywho, I started, but because I wanted to help people, but then I got stuck, because I was like, well, how the hell do I make these match? Because they're completely different, you know? And so it's been a long road, but I finally got it. And Course Correction has a groove now. And I'm working on 54, which is going to be like comedy and, you know, just like round table chat, but it's not going to be just women. It'll actually be me and a guy who's a DJ. So we'll have some music, and I'll be able to sing a little bit, and we'll do some skits, and, you know, it'll be like a full, really what I see myself as like a female Johnny Carson on that show. Because that's just, I feel like it would be cool to do that, you know, like have a late night show and, you know, talk about things that you can't necessarily talk about during the daytime, and, you know, just vibe out, have a good time.
Wow. That was the lane I figured you would be driving down.
Really?
Yeah. 'Cause you have a variety entertainment, like, It's like I look at you, and if, you know, outside of what Course Correction is now,
yeah.
If I were to just look at you as the entertainment figure that you are, I would think, okay, there's a little Carol Burnett in her.
Yes, a Taurus.
there's a little Oprah in her.
Yeah.
And well, at times there could be a little Cardi B in you.
Okay.
All of that. That's how I see you. It's like, okay, I could see her just breaking down the song and doing skits. I could see her basically, telling us how to live our whole life right. And I could see how she could tell off somebody all in one fell swoop, under one umbrella. Yeah. I could totally see that.
Yeah. I mean, I just
totally see that.
I just want to keep going, you know, like there's so many possibilities. I just feel like limiting myself to anything is going to keep me from where I'm supposed to be, you know. Well, like in doing all these other shows, like these ladies I connected with, like that's going to be a good show because it's going to be one that has some spiritual notes in it, but it's also going to have some of that same raw, uncorked feel to it from, the original Between Us Girls. It's like, it's going to kind of take course correction and mash it up with Between Us Girls. So that's going to be something that people haven't seen, I think.
And what I am seeing now is, I guess, the question I'm about to ask you. I have seen this turn that you've taken. And like I said, Between Us Girls was that raw, like, as you said, that raw, uncorked, uncensored talk that women have.
Yeah.
And I've seen you turn in course correction to a more holistic approach.
Yeah. I mean, that's just because I'm in that personal space,
And I was going to ask, how has course correction mirrored your personal life now in the direction it's going?
Well, completely. Like in the first episode, I was I grabbed whoever would do it with me. So I grabbed Rachel Dolezal and Asset Rising, and I was like, y'all want to talk about self-care? Because I knew that I did not have a routine, and I'm still working on it. But I was like, I need to talk about that. I feel like that's something that I need to talk about because that's what I'm working on. So it's kind of like whatever I was trying to tackle that in the first, I think it was like maybe the first 10 episodes. It was like whatever I was trying to accomplish that week. I tried to talk to that guest about that because a lot of those guests were leftover. You know what I mean? Mm. So yeah. I had to kind of try to spin it so that it all made sense. Because I couldn't talk about Girl Talking Wine. That wasn't the space that I was in.
Right.
And I did lose some listenership because people were like, well, where the jokes at? You know what I'm saying? And I get that. But like I told the platform last week, because I do post like IGTV videos on at MS Creative AF and on Between Us Girls podcast on Instagram. But I just told everybody it's important because I have to go through this course correction to become the person that's going to give y'all what you're looking for.
Yeah. Because here's what I was seeing from you. When you would actually do your shows and make appearances, I saw a woman who enjoyed herself to a point.
Yeah.
But I also saw a woman who was frustrated.
Yeah. Full of anxiety, really.
And I could see how now with course correction, it makes so much sense because it's giving more clarity to who you are, right. Not necessarily to us, but just to you too.
To me, yeah. To me, because that's the thing is, who am I? You know what I'm saying? Without Between Us Girls, what am I? Who am I? What is Between Us Girls without Between Us Girls? You know what I mean?
And you have learned and you've expressed here a lot. Mm-hmm. You were more than just a Between Us Girls type of person. Mm-hmm. Not saying that the creation was bad. The creation was awesome.
Right.
But there's more to you than that.
Right.
And there's more to any human being than that.
And it's made me be vulnerable and have to share that I'm struggling. You know what I'm saying? That I'm human, that I'm not the person that people think is already together. Like I'm working on myself, because I have things just like we were talking about earlier. All of the things that I taught my kids that they now have to unlearn. I want to help them. I want to be instrumental in your unlearning of what I taught you that I didn't do intentionally, but I want to be intentional in the reteaching.
And that's the essence of a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Somebody asked me last night if I was a teacher, and I said yes, even though I'm not a teacher by trade, but yes. Because anybody that you can reach and touch and give something to that they'll have forever. Well, you are a teacher. You've taught them.
But yeah, that's the essence of a teacher. Always learning so that you can find whatever nugget it is that you can impart upon people.
Right.
And that's what's the most refreshing part about your journey is that you're unafraid to teach. And you're unafraid to show us the lessons you're learning along the way. Right. And that is powerful.
Well, I hope that my vulnerability allows other people to become vulnerable because it's not easy, And I just hope that in showing my true self and who I am and how there's many facets to me. I'm funny, but I also do this, like that just lets people know that you can be all of these many things that you said that you were. It's up to you to take the steps, that are going to really carry you. Like in talking to creative clients, I always say, well, what's the end goal? Because I want to see it. I want to see what you see. So explain your vision to me so that I then can take it and say, okay, well, here's the steps that we need to take to get there. Because really what I'm doing is creative mapping for these people. I'm just doing the outline for them. And I think it's important because we all have these visions of what we see ourselves as or projects we want to complete. But once we realize how many steps it's going to take to complete, we quit. And so what I'm trying to provide to people is a hand to hold and support in that, because I'm going to run with you. So whatever you want to build, I'm going to do it with you. So that means that I'm as invested as you are. And that means that we're both putting our intention towards yours. You know what I mean? It's not just you by yourself trying to make it work. And I think a lot of people quit because they feel like they don't have support. And that's what I'm trying to stop.
And that's exactly why a lot of people, especially in the creative realm, quit.
Yeah.
Because the only cheerleader they have is themselves.
Right.
And that can get tiring, as you very well know.
Right.
I mean,
and that's another tool that I'm teaching, though, is how to use yourself as a cheerleader. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is going to sound so funky, but I am a fan of numerology and I watch the numbers. So like right now I'm sitting across from a building that says 5420. The number I see all day long every day is 54. So that just to me says, keep going, girl. You got it. I'm doing something different in talking to you, even because I haven't done many interviews by myself on other people's show. Every time I do something that I haven't done before, I tick it off as just a step towards growth.
Mm. Well, considering that I've been wanting to do this for 2 years, I take that as high praise. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for that. And I wanted to ask you this before I end this. I wanted to ask about Creative AF. Now, you've created this platform. You've talked about it all throughout the show. What I want to know is, how does this entity fuel your own creativity?
Well, the thing about me is I have a lot of ideas, right? Because I'm a creative as well. But a lot of my own ideas I don't complete because it takes a lot of work. And so what I wanted to provide to other people, because I noticed people would always come to me and ask me for advice on their projects naturally. And my mom told me that when I was born, she just looked in my eyes and I looked like an old wise woman. And that all these people always throughout my whole life would come to me for counsel. And I said, well, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing is, helping people in something. And then knowing that my drive is to, do creative projects and to create these really amazing things that happen in the 3D, because we take them from our head out here onto the paper and then we make them boom. And I want to help people do that. And then my number one goal is really just like to circulate more Black dollars. So the endeavor really began as a way to help these Black-owned businesses present themselves to the market and reach their target audience and grow at the rate at which they desire so that they can create wealth for their family. You know what I mean? Mm. And it does help me to be more creative in my own projects because it has helped me. And then in knowing that, like, when I don't have anything to do or work on for somebody else, I'm like, well, what can I work on? I have a lot that I'm doing. So just always kind of being in that creative energy is good for me in business and in podcasting. But it's also part of the reason why I need a self-care routine, because I'm giving out so much of myself all the time. I'm always giving out my energy. I'm passing it out to everybody. And as an empath, I'm feeling so much. I'm feeling everything that's coming from you. And it can get heavy. So I have to try to, figure out a space where I can just kind of call myself back and get grounded so that I can continue to be creative. Because once your stores are depleted, you're just sitting there. And that was kind of how I was after Between Us Girls ended. So like, I felt like everything I was releasing was kind of flat and I didn't really love it, but I kept going because every time I would talk to somebody, I would be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this interview because it was new and different. You know, it wasn't what we were doing before. I didn't have all my shit together. So I felt like, okay, well, it doesn't sound that great, but I'm going to put it out anyway. But in the continuing to do it, it has allowed me to step into a creative space that I was never in before. I'm talking about goddamn Johnny Carson now, you know, like, and not too long ago, I was like, I don't want to do it. So it's just like, you just got to get started. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what I'm loving about all of this is that we are getting to see the full you, and we're getting to see the happier you.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful.
Yeah. You know, I used to always say 4 out of 5 people have me fucked up, right?
Yes, I remember that.
Well, the truth in that was I had myself fucked up because I was always letting people change my vibe and giving away my power to people instead of just really taking that experience, processing it, and then reacting to it instead of taking everything so personally, because people don't do things to you because of you. They do them because of themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you have the awareness to know that that is what you were doing. Mm-hmm. And so now you won't do that anymore.
Right. Right. And that's what
because you have the tools to do it.
That's what I'm trying to teach at home. You know, like Michaela, she's 6. So I'm going to create like a chart for her where every day she can let me know if she got mad or however she felt. And then we can go through it and try to figure out, you know, so she can come up with some different reactions to those emotions, because that was what I noticed about myself, was that when things got tough or something was introduced into my environment that didn't feel good, I did not have a good reaction to it emotionally. And so in seeing my kids, and this is the thing that I'm trying to unlearn from them, is reacting like bullshit when things happen. So like with my son, he, you know, he's not 6. He can read and write. So for him, we'll be doing journaling in which he can really pinpoint, you know, it's going to be like shadow work for my kids, because I want to start it before they have this huge deficit. Like, I don't want them to be 35 years old having to unpack what they were taught or the trauma they experienced because I have bad coping skills.
You want to do like what my father told me that he wanted to do with me, and that was he wanted me to be better than he was. Mm-hmm. If that energy is passed on to you, then that energy to you to me would be passed on to my offspring, that I'd want them to be better than me.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting that you brought that up because, you know, I mentioned Fernando. He and I had a mediumship 2 years ago in which he channeled, you know, to talk to me through my dad, to talk to me through him or whatever. And one of the things that he mentioned was that I have the ability to do what he wasn't able to do. And so in all of this research I've been doing, I'm thinking that's it. You know, like just the healing of our bloodline and kind of breaking that cycle. Because, you know, he gave it to me, those poor, emotionally intelligent skills. And he didn't do it on purpose. Nobody gave him the right tools, you know. And so I'm just trying to stop that, because I don't want my grandkids to come into a household where people are frustrated because of life, you know. But the difference in that is I know I choose how I feel. You know, and I think if my dad could have gotten to that point, he would have lived a different life. If my mom had known that, she would have had a different experience. And so that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm not saying it's too late for my kids, but I know for sure if I give this to them now, all of my grandbabies will be good.
Yeah. I think I can say with all certainty that if your father were on earth and he heard you say that, he'd be extremely proud of you. But I pretty much know he is already.
Right. I'm sure. I mean, you know, energy never leaves. It just kind of repurposes. So yeah, definitely.
That is all the time I have. I'm so thankful that you joined me on this wonderful show and this great conversation with a sister of mine. on Revelations. And now we have transitioned into the last segment, which is called Plug Tuning.
Okay.
And in honor of De La Soul, it is plug, and plug away. So where can the good people find you?
Okay, so you can definitely find me on Facebook, Between Us Girls, the podcast. And then I also have a hashtag Creative AF page there where I talk about news, and on my Instagram posts go there, but I usually share like posts about news and kind of what's going on in the community and share that message with people. And then on Instagram is where I do a lot of my work, because I do a lot of videos at MS Creative AF and at Between Us Girls podcast. And then YouTube is cranking up. So Between Us Girls, the podcast on YouTube. And then follow me on my personal Facebook page so you can see me go live, and I do randoms because I just really like going live. I feel like they gave it to us. Somebody got to use it for the right purpose, because people be going live talk about nothing. So I like to go live and, kind of just drop a little bit out there. And yeah, I guess I should talk about my website, www.betweenusgirlspodcast.com, and then www.mscreativeaf.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the CEO of Creative AF, the host and producer of Between Us Girls Presents Course Correction, and really most importantly, a good friend of mine and fellow Tarian, Michel Roy. Michel, 2 years in the making, and I am so glad that I was able to have this conversation with you. It was well worth the wait. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.